So with your first square, we're just going to draw a plus sign to make 4 boxes. We're going to try out some different techniques here. The first thing we're going to do is just get use a dry brush. So you do need to get it a little bit wet, but you want to try to make it run out of ink really, which I'm not doing. There's a little bit of it, right? You get that kind of jaggedy, dry look. So that's one technique that you can do. So that's a dry brush technique. I'm going to make it darker so you can see a little bit better. That's really wet. It's kind of running on the edges there. So there's a little bit more. So that's one technique you can do, dry. Next, we're going to do a wash. So when we do a wash, we are having a nice clean brush, a nice wet brush. You're going to fill in your whole area with water. And then you're going to get color and you're going to put it on all over here. So you're just spreading that color all over the wash that you already put on. So that's a wash. Next, we're going to make kind of like a wet on wet or wet and wet, where we're going to, let's say, have some yellow here, and it's going to be pretty wet. So, and then we're going to do like a bloom by taking a different color, and you see how that just feathers out here. It kind of blooms right on this. So that's a nice wet on wet technique. You could get the rest of that square going and maybe add a different color just to have some more fun. You're going to want to, with this sort of thing, you're going to want to use analogous colors, meaning colors next to each other on the color wheel, as opposed to opposite. Unless you want brown, you'll probably just get like a brown color. If you do like yellow on purple or blue on orange. Okay, so fourth, just kind of using the shape of the brush to do something. I'm not sure how many different shapes we have available to us today, but let's say, we're kind of using this shape to make some little, like this. This is my favorite shape. It's called filbert, and I like that it, you can kind of use, just using the brush. Let's say we were doing greenery. Let's say this was like trees or something. Just different shapes can kind of lend themselves to different things. Maybe a tiny brush here. Ooh, now that's some dry brush work right there. That would go up in here. Okay, let me get that a little wetter. So just having your brush help you do some of the work, using the shape that it is. If it aligns with what you are painting, that can be a big help, save you some work. Okay, next, I would like to do a variegated stripe, so a wash with doing the different stripes of color, and then I'm going to, I'm going to do a wash. Oh, I'm doing the whole thing. Let me just flip this over. We want to do another square or plus sign here. Got ahead of myself. We're going to do a wash. I already have some pink, and that's okay. So let's just say we've got more red on the bottom, and then we're going to go into purple, and then into blue. Okay, we're just going to kind of mix those around. And then I'm going to add a little more pigment to that purple to make it more intensely purple. Mix those together. Then I'm going to take some salt. I'm going to sprinkle a little salt in here. It just makes a cool effect. And we'll let that dry while we're working. Another thing you can do is you can use scraping. So with the back of your brush, or if you have a palette knife handy, you'd want to go as small as possible, so I'm going to use the back of one. You can kind of scrape, let's say, some branches into this. To make it, it'll pull in darker if you make divots into there. Okay, so let's say you're doing that. Now, let's say that you are working and you got some color down and something you don't like, you don't want that. You are like, uh-oh, that's not what I meant to have here. This can happen. Sometimes other color goes on top of a color that you want, or sometimes you just don't want that color at all. So you want to make sure your brush is very clean. We're going to lift or kind of erase. You want to get a fairly wet, I'm going to let this dry a little bit. You can see if it's dry by looking to see if it's shiny. It'll be less shiny. So let's say I go over this with, here's the other thing, I'm not using watercolor paper, so you can't scrub this paper very much, and this may or may not work, but we're going to try to, you see how I'm getting some of the pigment off? You want to have you want to go over it wet, and then just kind of dry your brush and kind of go over it. And that's not perfect, but it's something. We can even try the yellow with a lighter color, might be better. I'm going to actually kind of scrub it here, and then I'm going to dry my brush, kind of go back over it. This paper isn't being very forgiving, but you can at least lighten it a bit, right? And by using this technique, and pull up some of that color. Oh, that's my cat Pickles. To try to do that. This wasn't a great example. Like I said, this paper isn't being very forgiving. Let's see if we just kind of, if it's still wet, our chances are better. We can kind of go over it and then pull it up with a dry brush over it. First you go wet, then you go dry. Okay. And then the last one, oh, I didn't get a paper towel. I'm going to be using just a cloth rag that I have close by, but you can also try to pull something wet up with a paper towel. One example I saw is if you're trying to do like a sky, and you want to try to use a paper towel to kind of make some cloud-like shapes in here. Again, this paper isn't the best, but anyways, and also for erasing purposes, you could try to get like a towel, a paper towel or whatever, try to pull some of that off of there. So I want us to try these so that when you're doing your shapes and when you're doing your larger watercolor, you have these techniques that you have at your disposal to enhance your painting. Okay, thanks so much.